Please be seated. The Assembly has resumed its sitting. When we broke earlier, we are debating the appropriation financial years 2020 and 2021 Bill 2019. The matter is open for debate. The Honorable Member from Savannah.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And as I follow some of the freshmen who've spoken recently, especially the couple of young ones there from Georgetown, I was very impressed, I must say. Would like to get some of that youth back that I heard them exude. It was a good job. Mr. Speaker, I would like to take this opportunity also to congratulate you on your 35 years in politics, active politics, not to mention when you were assisting others to get elected. Mr. Speaker, on Saturday, I was very touched and inspired to attend, which is very rare, funerals, but the Honorable Premier's dad. It was a tribute to one of our genuine, real old-time Caymanians who dearly loved his family. May his soul rest in peace and light perpetual shine on him. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to also take this opportunity to extend sympathies to an old shipmate of mine from approximately 54 years ago, my first and only trip to sea, Mr. Alva Billy Borden. He's a good and dear friend of mine, and God's willing, I plan to attend the funeral this upcoming weekend. Mr. Speaker, this, as you may know, is my 27th contribution to Friday's presentation by the Governor, Premier, and Finance Minister. Mr. Speaker, I'm proud that I'm second only to you in this House at this time with longevity, with others coming close behind there. The Minister of Education, I think, was the 4 years later that she got elected, as I see her walk into the chamber now. Mr. Speaker, after education, I think traffic congestion in Cayman is a high priority and has to be dealt with pronto. I was so relieved when Minister Hugh took over the Ministry for Works, and in his early days he echoed what I have been preaching for almost 20 years. We cannot build ourselves out of major traffic problems. And if you doubt me, you can go in Miami, the mazes they have there, and the billions and billions of dollars that they spend. And the more roads they build, the more traffic, the more congestion, and more jams. Significant amounts of road work has been done, but I note mostly in the Georgetown constituency, in the global area, in an attempt to get the eastern areas of the island into town faster, especially in the mornings, with some degree of success. And I must note now with the help of the police, and I want to thank them for the work they're doing. Likewise, Mr. Speaker, in the evenings for eastbound traffic, I have pleaded for many years to reduce the traffic coming out from Southtown from 4:30 p.m. to about 7 p.m., and it is now being managed. Once again, by the police. I was pleased the other evening when I was going up that traffic coming from off of Linford Pearson Highway coming straight, literally graduate. There was no stop, just flowed and flowed. Very nice. And I must take my hat off to those who have observed and made the necessary change. But, Mr. Speaker, it simply boils down to the fact that there are too many motor vehicles on this island. It is my belief that we must urgently look at implementing a dependable public transport system. And I would urge that we expedite this consideration sooner than the 18 months that Honorable Premier spoke about in his delivery. And I'm glad that he put at least a time frame there. There are significant amounts of money being lost as drivers sit in their vehicles in almost stationary traffic at times. Our three eastern districts are really frustrated, Mr. Speaker, and tired of dealing with monstrous traffic jams. And I know the prospect in Red Bay area has tasted some of that same traffic coming down in the mornings. And this happens mornings and night. We waited so long for the Ironwood development to assist in the east-west arterial extension, but at this time it seemed like it was not to be. Speaker, I remember in the government that I was forming or part of about 10 years ago when we were talking about building the government administration building. I suggested at that time there was a piece of land, I think it was 15 or 25 acres in the Spots area, that government consider purchasing this for the government administration building. Of course, it was said that the private businesses in town, that was too far for them to drive. Mr. Speaker, I believe that would have taken hundreds of cars off the road in that direction that would come back up that way and relieve the downcoming traffic. But Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to see $14 million for the major upgrading of east-west capacity road work. I trust that there will be amenable and fair negotiations with those who may have to give up their land that has been in their possession for decades. I would ask that consideration be given, Mr. Speaker, moving on, for a cemetery to serve Newlands, Savannah, and Bordentown West, as there are only a few private cemeteries in this area. The other request I'm urging is to consider fencing the Nurse Joseph Senior Center, which houses the largest collection of cultural and history in these islands. I'd like to take this opportunity to praise the leadership there under the able leadership of Honorable Mary Lawrence and her 5 or 6 other cohorts which are old, not old per se, but age-wise. And it was so wonderful to hear that they had such an excellent Heritage Day there on Friday. His Excellency was there, and I know Swanky and Band was there, and the old-time Bordentowners were there thoroughly enjoying and hearing the music. Mr. Speaker, there is still a carryover request from last year for road work and drain wells in Savannah, which I've spoken to the minister about, and he's assured me that this will be dealt with and given due consideration, and that we not be left out again like how cow treat last year calf, because they jumped from certain areas of Bordentown, Newlands, and went to some other district. One of my colleagues has shared with me that we must note the motorbikes using the access road from Anton Borden. And talking about the motorbikes, I just hope that the police can stay On top of that situation, because on weekends it is really ridiculous how they carry on, and at times it almost seems flaunting in the face of the police services. Mr. Speaker, I continue asking that due consideration be given for negotiations of the access to North Sound Gardens with adjoining subdivisions, especially in times of emergency. An example was given to me where the ambulance went up there, the driver, and because of one of the roads being blocked, they could not actually get into that subdivision. Mr. Speaker, I now move to the Finance Ministry. I would be grateful if a brief explanation could be given as to the $1.9 million in 2020 and $1.6 million in 2021 for preparatory works in advance of the major project for the redevelopment of the cargo and cruise berthing port in Georgetown. I assume, Mr. Speaker, that if government had a successful referendum vote, the contractors would start right away, and with the Premier indicating no expenditure by the government, if they could, one of them winding up, indicate what the preliminary work would be over that 2-year budget span. Mr. Speaker, there's a forecast loss of $16.9 million for statutory authorities and government-owned companies. I'm wondering what will be done to make them more productive. An example, Mr. Speaker, is Cineco, as the last finance minister, when he left, was considering all of the statutory authority and government companies to bring them under the Cineco umbrella of health insurance coverage, thus being a much bigger pool of insurance premiums. Wonder about off-reg. Are they still stumbling along in the dark? Someone has to get a grip on them. And I know that their commitment has been out there. It seems to be they've stabilized a lot, but some time ago there was some significant losses and, to me, unnecessary expenditure. It was uplifting to see the further financial increase to our seniors. Also, the ex gratia payments to retired seamen and veterans who laid the successful foundation for the Cayman we now live in and enjoy today. Mr. Speaker, I very much remember when the amount was a measly $50 per month. You and I incrementally increased this over the years for these most deserving people, and it's good to see that in due course they will be getting the $900, close to $1,000 a month. That's someone nitpicking between the $950 and $1,000. I think the way it's going, it is good to see that they're getting it. I'm grateful, Mr. Speaker, to see the $2 million for the completion of the Chapel Church of God Hall in Bordentown as a hurricane shelter. I know just after being elected, my honorable colleague from Bordentown West and I went up there late one afternoon to look at its condition. And I know our Bordentown minister, the Minister of Health, fought valiantly for it also. There was a suggestion to me by some of the people that some consideration be given for assistance to the new Breakers Church to help finish and possibly negotiate as another hurricane shelter. This is a good-sized building, Mr. Speaker, and I asking in due course if at some stage it could be given that consideration to help in that area also. Mr. Speaker, there's a $42.9 million in 2020 and $25.3 million for the Ministry of Education, Youth, Agriculture, and Lands. Mr. Speaker, once again, I don't seem to see anything for the consideration of an additional school for the Savannah, Newlands, and Bordentown West catchment area. The Savannah Primary School student population is approximately, I think it's over 430 at this time, and Cayman. And I need not tell my colleagues this specific Bordentown district location, the new subdivisions there, it seems to me like every weekend there's another one popping up. They're absolutely exploding for whatever reason. I guess they like the peace and quiet. I don't know how they're going to deal with that, with the amount of traffic that we're having to deal with. Mr. Speaker, I know that a few finance committees ago we talked about a school bus for the Savannah School. I'm asking the Honorable Minister to please continue to look at that and see what can be done. And in her debate or response, in regards to not one stage, the teachers at the Savannah Primary School, there was concern as there were a number of challenged students that seemed to be keeping back the other students. I think it was about 2 or 3 years ago, before she was the minister at that time, that it was estimated that 25% of the student population needed a certain degree of assistance and help. I'm asking that this be looked at also. There's also, Mr. Speaker, a great need for the increase of size in the Savannah School Hall. They have been begging for that for quite some time, which is now literally bursting at the seams, having to cater to over 400 students at times. Any function that they have to go to one of the churches or somewhere else to host it, even for just things within the school itself. It's just not enough space there. I must note that I'm pleased that the Bordentown Primary School Hall, who's been waiting just as long, is finally being upgraded, which was badly needed. Mr. Speaker, and I have spoken and got some response back from the Honorable Minister in regards to the portico, which has been knocked down, I think seems to be close to 3 months, with the top sitting on the ground and rusted steel rods sticking up out of the ground. Mr. Speaker, I urge and beg that the powers that be would take about just a half an hour to go to the Savannah Primary School at pick-up times when school is letting out around 3 p.m. There is pure bedlam and chaos with children and parents just seem to be streaming from all over the place. I know that the principal may have indicated improvement, but I ask that it be looked at. Not to mention, as I went there last week sometime, when it rains and the children and parents have to walk in water literally ankle deep to get them. I do note the principal's response and that the ministry, through the ministry, it is sad to say to take so long for them to try and deal with redoing or rebuilding or remaking whatever they're going to do with the portico. It's an eyesore. See what happens, Mr. Speaker, when it rains, the buses then have to come in there, whereas they always park in the Adventist church parking lot adjoining the school on the west side. Mr. Speaker, this is something of great urgency, and I beg the powers that be, and I know they have to depend to a certain degree on the arrangements through public works. Mr. Speaker, I'm urging that someone look at the land on the east side of the school between the building, the school building and Foster's, to clear it for additional parking. We may just save an injury or a life. As you know, Mr. Speaker, I was instrumental in the purchase of all the land surrounding Savannah Primary School, so I know that the space is there. I think you and I were in government when that land was bought. Because it's almost next to impossible to find somewhere to park. The cars are literal at times circling, going around. I now, Mr. Speaker, turn to my pet peeve. and grave concern at this school for a long time: traffic and speeders. And I will include in this Bodentown Primary School and Clifton Hutter High School. And I must extend it to all of the primary and schools in Cayman. But I deal literally daily with the Savannah Primary School, the Clifton Hutter, and Bodentown. Mr. Speaker, there are flashing 15-mile-per-hour lights from 7 a.m. to 8:30 a.m. and from 2 to about 3:30 p.m. approximately at all school days. But rarely, Mr. Speaker, anybody pays any attention to these lights. Now and then, the police go with their flashing lights and catch a few people, but most of the time, those huge trucks and cars are speeding through at these times. Once again, I beg and plead that we use some of our millions to put in a radar-mounted camera system here at Bodentown Primary, Clifton Hutter, and Savannah, and the other schools to make sure that it's monitored. I know the minister spoke that they were putting one on West Bay Road. Mr. Speaker, it would be paid for in one day at the Savannah Primary School if they put any system in there. I mean, the traffic there is bumper to bumper, up and down. It's just constantly, especially that time of day. It scares the life out of me. I see where there are plans to put in a radar system on West Bay Road. Mr. Speaker, as you know, because of certain congestion down there, you can hardly go that fast. Mr. Speaker, I would like to give kudos to our Bodentown minister for starting the new mental health residential facility and the planned implementation of the integrated waste management system, improving the dump. I would like to personally thank these people who drive the garbage trucks and those that actually pick up the garbage and put it into the trucks. Mr. Speaker, I personally have no problem with these folks working around 4 a.m. in the morning, as sometimes I hear on the radio. I never hear such nonsense in my life. It's better than garbage piling up for days. I too, like the member from Northside, have some concern, Mr. Health Minister, in regards to building a new hospital in that area. There's always need for health care. But as I look at the hospital in East End and the one in Georgetown, the amount of money, and I'm sure we'll need to, once you do the research, you'll find out, to put in all of the X-ray, CT, MRI, necessary equipment for investigation, that it will be quite a commitment. Whereas I think if the services and the adding more staff at Georgetown may save you a lot of money in the long run. But that decision is yours, Mr. Minister, and by those that advise you. Just a quick experience when I was driving on the road on Tuesday, coming from town, and the congestion from around. At that time, it was estimated approximately 19,000 cruise passengers, which had brought traffic to almost a standstill. People were looking restless. Mr. Speaker, it is my concern that if we don't get a grip on this overcrowding, there could be an adverse effect on stay-over tourism. I pray I'm wrong. The Honourable Minister has now indicated that it is being looked at closely and that there will be consideration of managing the traffic on these days when there's a lot of cruise visitors in town. Mr. Speaker, some other observations on the delivery of the budget. This was from the Honourable Premier's delivery. Read the cargo port, enhancement and greater volumes. New rates and more efficient operations will reduce the cost of imports. Mr. Speaker, I'll just draw an example of three items that I notice that I deal with daily that will be affected if some of these supplies are brought in bulk. Milk products, bread, and juice. There is an expiry date on each of these, and bringing them in bigger volume, their shelf life will expire. As I have seen in some establishments, Cayman does not have the population to use up weekly some of these products while they are still fresh. Planning. Mr. Speaker, as I literally go to Clifton Other High School every day of the school week, I notice the building under construction up by the Frank Sound dock, and I've spoken to different people. The wall that is being built, it is my belief it is too close to the edge of the road. My colleague from Northside indicates that he was successful in getting back 2 feet. It is at the T intersection of Northside East End Road, and I am much afraid that a bad accident will happen there. To negotiate coming out of Northside, there is not much clearance space for traffic going west, unless they're going to try to Labour government to widen the other side of the road to accommodate their lovely-looking building that is taking shape there. The Speaker has spoken to senior planning officers, and also I know my Borden Town minister is aware, and he and I have talked about it, and when we had planning up there a few months ago, they also, but nothing is being done, and I think there needs to be some enforcement, because it's no good after the accident happened that we try to make remediation. I trust someone will take a closer look at what I envisage as a danger spot. Mr. Speaker, I would like to question if some funds could once again be allotted to the Kodaks. You and I have talked about this a lot, and I remember when you introduced this long time ago. The great success that was enjoyed by the Savenue Kodaks under the leadership of Ms. Heather Borden. Some of the biggest Christmas parties for our seniors from the whole island was sponsored by them at the Savannah and Newlands Playfield across from the Baptist Church on Pedro Castle Road. Plus, the young children used it as a safe venue for their functions as the area is fenced. I also know that the Northward Road Christmas tree lighting benefited from the Kodaks funds. And Mr. Speaker, I know that the Kodak in your district of West Bay used to be very active and enjoyed helping out with our seniors. Mr. Austin, don't see him there, a member from Prospect, I asked that if he could try and find some help for this worthwhile cause. Mr. Speaker, in my 27 years of budget speeches, I do not remember seeing one so brief and short of substance as this one by His Excellency the Governor. In his final paragraph before the conclusion, I do not know what he is implying. And I'll read for the benefit of the House. I have commented separately on yesterday's appeal of the judgment on same-sex marriage. It is my firm belief that the government should act with reasonable haste to comply with the court's directions. As Governor and representative of Her Majesty the Queen, it is my strong wish that despite strong beliefs and opinions, everyone in this honorable House treats everyone with courtesy, dignity, and respect. I want to know what this gentleman is implying. Mr. Speaker, for those of us that were in opposition at that time, Lord Ahmad, in the governor's office, indicated that the United Kingdom was not going to interfere on our dealings with same-sex marriage. These people, Mr. Speaker, have to stop talking out of both sides of their mouth. Mr. Speaker, I know you've been here eventually 8 years longer than me. I don't ever remember in that time that I've been here in my 27 years where either one of my colleagues in this legislative assembly badmouthed or said anything degrading about these people. Mr. Speaker, I'm 74 years plus. I have represented these islands at the highest level, not as high as you and the Premier and the Minister of Education, but I've been to Paho and different places representing these islands. I have never known of any of my fellow colleague parliamentarians acting untoward to the LGBT community. Mr. Speaker, respect earns respect. In Cayman, many families have family members who have chosen this lifestyle. I don't remember anyone harassing them. I've never heard of any business refusing to provide service to them. No bars or restaurants refuse to entertain them. Mr. Speaker, what His Excellency needs to know is what started this furor was Professor Raznovich and the last governor's daughter advocating in the Truman Bodden Law School that we change our 500-year-old tradition of marriage and our marriage law and amend our 2009 Constitution to accommodate same-sex marriage. At that time, Mr. Speaker, you may remember I brought a motion asking for the legislature to reform our 2010 marriage law, and it passed unanimously. From that time, people like Raznovich has been stirring up things and calling myself and other Caymanians all kind of derogatory names, calling our beliefs hate speech, which is a typical word of these people, on all kind of phobias. Mr. Speaker, I was saddened when the ruling by the Chief Justice was supported by the governor after only being here for a few months. Did he know the sentiment of the Caymanian people in regards to same-sex marriage? Who is he here to guide and lead and support? I don't see Her Majesty interfering in Brexit and other domestic issues. Why is he trying to give his opinion, not knowing what we Caymanians stand for all of our life? When it comes to Mr. Raznovich, Mr. Speaker, I can't understand why he's still here. After being released from the law school, I believe it had been a poor Jamaican or some other nationality, they would have been given 2 or 3 weeks to pack up and go home. I don't understand why he's allowed to go internationally and badmouth Cayman, visiting the Vatican and other places, promoting a seminar here in Cayman in June 2016. Now recently, Mr. Raznovich is criticizing our appeal courts, saying their decision was bad for Cayman and that our Constitution has suffered a serious wound. Thank God for our Constitution because of their correct decision in overturning the Honorable Chief Justice ruling. Mr. Speaker, the local advocacy group, Colors Cayman, was raising concerns of our capable education minister in her ministry's proposed school guidelines, saying anti-bullying rules will not protect students in that community. I guess they meant in the LGBT community. Mr. Speaker, to that end, I wrote a letter to the editor of both newspapers. It was published in what seems to now be the preferred paper, The Times, but was rejected by the Cayman Compass. And sir, I would like to read it with your permission. I've actually made a copy so you can follow me. Mr. Speaker, the letter is self-explanatory, and as I read it, you will understand my grave concern of these advocacy groups getting a foothold in Cayman and the devastation it will cause our very young children and our own Cayman lifestyle. Mr. Speaker, if you doubt me, look at what's happening in the United States and Canada and the United Kingdom, where they are forcing it in the school curriculum. I will now read the letter for you, Mr. Speaker. Dear editor, I have taken note in recent times the comments by the local advocacy group Colors Cayman and their concerns of our capable education minister in her ministry's proposed school anti-bullying rules will not protect students in that community. This, I am sure, will be done in the parameters of our laws, having known her capable leadership for over 20 years. The concerns of the majority of Caymanians is what will happen in the future to Cayman if the LGBTQI, whatever else it is, people is given the right to marry to the same-sex partners. When they get their foot in the door, as frequently is now happening in Canada, United States, Europe, and other countries where literally, Mr. Speaker, anything goes. Children as young as 4 and 5 are being taught in schools, and the education boards in some places give their approval, where adults actually go in and demonstrate to these precious innocent children. Drag queens go into the libraries. I see some of them were festering down at the Kempton and read their trash to these children. Is this what we want our Cayman parents to face when the floodgates are opened? Children in elementary schools will be exposed to the rightness and complete normality of homosexuality, bisexuality, and transgender expression. Our opposing views will be branded as dangerous and homophobic, to be silenced and excluded from the classrooms. Mr. Speaker, in 2000, the Boston area conference gained national outrage when the Parents' Rights Coalition exposed the sickening workshop which involved adults teaching young kids explicit sex acts. In these workshops, students as young as 12 were given graphic instructions in homosexual sex acts by state employees. Cayman, how will you stop this when the gates are opened? And in the name of human rights, some people will demand and order this lifestyle. If the precedent had been set, thank God for our appeals court. There is a gay agenda, Mr. Speaker, and it's an organized effort to produce political, social, and religious changes within society that will lead to a tolerating and eventually accepting as normal homosexual relationships. Mr. Speaker, for a better understanding on how this gay agenda started over 50 years ago, I urge you to read the book, The Marketing of Evil by David Kapelian. Cayman, with the proliferation of hate speech laws around the world, evangelical pastors have been jailed in some countries for merely quoting the Bible and labeling homosexual behavior a sin, such as Leviticus 18, 22, 29, 20, 13, Romans 1, 26 to 27, and 1 Corinthians 6 to 9. I've quoted these scriptures in our legislative assembly and have been vilified and called all kinds of nasty names. But this is what my Bible says. Mr. Speaker, this is no joke what we're dealing with. Cayman does not have the capacity, if this gets out of hand, if you look at the television and the whatlessness that go on these gay pride parades, you will know what I'm talking about. On April the 5th, 2018, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services posted this statement on its website. In the United States, gay, bisexual, and other men who have sex with men are the population most affected by HIV according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. About 6 to 7% of people diagnosed with HIV in 2015 in the United States were gay and bisexual men. Mr. Speaker, I urge all, especially our Christian praying ones, to pray for God's continued blessings and protection from some of the tidal waves that Cayman may have to face if we get this wrong. Thank God one of those waves have been stopped. I leave you with 1 Corinthians 6 and 9. We talk about the love of God. He wouldn't do this and he wouldn't do that. God, judge, jury, and executioner. Let me read you what he says in 1 Corinthians 6 and 9. Do you not know that the unrighteous will not inherit the kingdom of God? Do not be deceived. Neither fornicators, idolaters, nor adulterers, nor homosexuals, nor sodomites shall inherit his eternal kingdom. Man's laws cannot make moral what God has declared immoral. A quote by D.H. Oakes. Mr. Speaker, it just seems like certain areas of Cayman, we seem to be on a, that was signed by myself, Mr. Speaker, that there seemed to be a pleasure craze. There were certain snippets on the last Badabanu parade. Mr. Speaker, some of the things that people shared with me that was going on, it was disgusting, totally disgusting. Mr. Speaker, the last thing I would like to share with you is the culture wars. This is from Canada, and I will have a copy of this for you. This was earlier this week. I wrote that things in Canada are moving very, very quickly to the point where the LGBT movement has the power to begin imposing the worldview of the sexual revolution in the country, including Christian communities. Angry, abusive mobs are attempting to deplatform anyone who refuses to say that biological men can become women. And we know that scientifically that is impossible. It is not particularly surprising that expressing even mild disagreement with the LGBT agenda can get you kicked out of a Canadian public school these days, but it is jarring that the controversy revolved around a rainbow poppy, a thing I didn't even know existed until this story broke. That comes about, Mr. Speaker, from a young 17-year-old student who objected to wearing that rainbow as opposed to the traditional red and black. Remembrance Day has always been a uniquely unifying event in Canada, where those of us from all backgrounds can gather to commemorate and honor those who died in fight for freedom overseas. It seems that the LGBT movement cannot even leave that alone, but must forcibly insert themselves into this day of commemoration and demand that people take aside on their ideological agenda. Mr. Speaker, some of these people, and we have some good ones there that don't go to these extremes. We'd like to say these are not Sunday school or Sabbath school teachers that is dealing with some of these things. It is downright scary. As I indicated in the last Batavinou parade, it was disgusting to watch a child interact and portraying sexual exhibition. I beg and plead with our police to monitor this, and not only that, it should be us as decent, God-fearing Caymanians or wherever we're from. This is not the right thing to do with our children. It ain't. Nobody can justify this to me. You got to have a sick and depraved mind. Mr. Speaker, in closing, I would like to thank the Honorable Premier and his Christian advisors who prepared our Constitution section on the definition of marriage in the Bill of Rights. To name a few, Pastor Ali Banks of blessed memory, Pastor Cheyenne O'Connor, Bishop Sykes, and several others. Mr. Speaker, little did they know that their definition would have saved Cayman from the imposition of same-sex marriage by some of these impostors. God bless our learned appeal court justices. I'd like to thank many of those that came together on the Cayman and Caribbean cause. People like Katina, Jackie, Pastor Allison, Bishop Sykes, Pastor Philip Gums from overseas. My colleague, she and I sat through the hearing. Minister of Education, Ms. Julie, thank you for being there and standing up. And our Caribbean and U.S. supporters who sent up unending prayers. He still answers prayers. He still answers prayers. Finally, Mr. Speaker, I agree with you that this is the biggest budget ever presented to this House. And I pray and trust our people will benefit significantly. And we see a dramatic reduction in persons applying for nice help, as we see in the Times newspaper approximately over 1,000 people in attendance. And it was kind of sad when it put the picture showing that many people. Let us hope and pray that these people do not have to go through this again. Mr. Speaker, thank you, and may God bless these Cayman Islands and protect us from those who would do us harm, cause problems within our society, and then go away and get happy somewhere else. If they want somewhere to do their nastiness, go somewhere else. Don't stay in Cayman.
Does any other the member for West Bay Central?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to make my contribution to the 2020-2021 budget debate. As Ministerial Counselor for Environment and Housing, it's a great privilege to address this honorable House on these subjects. Having been involved in the water sports industry since I was 10 years old, I can tell you that the environment, both around our shores and on land, has always been a true passion of mine. The matter of housing is important to me as well, as we seek to ensure that all Caymanians have a decent standard of accommodation and a place they can truly call home. Mr. Speaker, not long after taking office in May 2017, the Honorable Minister and I met with DOE Director Gina Ebanks-Petrie and her deputies to learn about the important work being implemented by her department. I can confirm that this remains the case today. I am still impressed and thankful by the many good works being carried out by the Department of Environment and the entire department team, and their aims to further protect our natural resources in these beloved islands. Mr. Speaker, there have been some significant achievements and challenges pertaining to the Department of Environment during the 2018 and 2019 financial years, which I wish to note and share with members of this honorable House. Mr. Speaker, on the topic of protected areas, the DOE has completed its input on proposals to enhance the marine protected areas around these three islands. These were approved by Cabinet, and draft regulations are being finalized by the legal drafting department. In terms of terrestrial protected areas, Mr. Speaker, 2 rounds of protected area purchases and designations were finalized, including protected area designations of Crown land and land newly acquired by the Crown, all in 2017. A 3rd round of terrestrial protected area nominations were taken through National Conservation Law statutory public consultation periods in 2018, and a presentation on the results was made to caucus in 2019. Mr. Speaker, a management plan was developed for the Miga Bay Pond protected area, which will be considered by the National Conservation Council in December, prior to the plan being put out for public consultation. Work also began towards a management plan for the Hemington Forest National Park in Cayman. Protected species. A species conservation plan for mangroves was finalized and is awaiting Cabinet approval. A sea turtle conservation plan was developed and put out for public consultation. Additionally, in order to address one of the main threats to the nesting sea turtles, utilizing environmental protection funding and in partnership with the properties identified within the critical nesting habitat identified on the north end of 7 Mile Beach, the DOE retrofitted 6 properties with turtle-friendly lighting, and lighting plans for an additional 7 properties are currently being finalized with a view to completing the equipment orders by the end of the year, and the installation likely to take place early next year. In collaboration with CUC and the NRA, 32 street lights were also replaced with turtle-friendly street lights within the critical habitat area. The Darwin Project, assessment, protection, and conservation actions for important seabird populations in the Cayman Islands was also completed and is informing the development of a conservation plan for the seabirds. Conservation plans are also being developed for parrots and rock iguanas. The DOE in a tropical plant area, important tropical plant areas workshop for the UK overseas territories and begun drafting the conservation plans for Cayman's most unique and critically endangered plant species. The blue iguana population was assessed in the Salina Reserve in 2018 and the Queen Elizabeth II Botanic Park in 2019. In collaboration with the National Trust, the DOE assisted with the annual health screening of the captive blue iguana. A captive Cayman parrot registration drive was launched, which will enable more effective enforcement of protective provisions in the National Conservation Law going forward. The current status of the wild parrot population in Cayman Brac was also assessed in 2018. Mr. Speaker, in the area of environmental management, in 2018 and 19 to date, on behalf of the National Conservation Council, the DOE has reviewed and provided technical assistance and advice on 47 coastal works applications, 852 planning applications, and an additional 42 National Conservation Law Section 41 consultations. As chair of the Environmental Assessment Board, DOE is also managing the process of environmental impact assessment associated with the proposed cruise berthing facility, the integrated solid waste management system, and the east-west arterial road. An additional 7 applications were screened for EIAs. Mr. Speaker, on an international front, an invasive species horizon scanning workshop for the UK overseas territories was held in Cayman, with a follow-up on analyzing entry pathways in consultation with the Department of Agriculture and Customs and Border Control. Staff of DOE represented Cayman in the IUCN Iguana Specialist Group, Birds of the Caribbean meetings, the Gulf and Caribbean Fisheries Institute meetings in both years. Mr. Speaker, turning now to an issue which I recall to be the topic of many conversations both among members of this House and the general public, the green iguanas. Members of the general public will remember that this invasive species had become a serious pest since the population explosion following the Hurricane Ivan in 2004. They were an extreme nuisance, and finding a solution to control them had been very vexing, to say the least. Mr. Speaker, as was mentioned by the Honorable Minister in his contribution, I am indeed pleased to report that the country has seen a huge achievement in this regard. And as we can all attest to the dramatically reduced numbers in this population, approximately 500 cullers were recruited. A cull management contractor was appointed, and over 1 million green iguanas were culled within a 12-month period between October 2018 and October 2019. Green iguana culling pressure in the sister islands was also maintained throughout this period, and the Department of Environment is in the process of piloting a thermal imaging by drone as an efficient detection technique. My congratulations to the Department of Environment and the culling project for a huge achievement. Turning now to the National Housing Development Trust. Mr. Speaker, the Trust has worked to progress the plans for additional affordable homes to join the existing ones in Bordentown site. During the past 2 years, the Trust has seen 16 affordable homes being completed in Bordentown Phase 2 project. These are within budget, Mr. Speaker, as the budgeted amount was $2.5 million and the final costing was $2.2 million. It is pleasing to report that the affordable homes within this site are fully occupied by Cayman families that have achieved the dream of home ownership. Mr. Speaker, during 2019, the Trust undertook project and land acquisition in East End with Phase 2. This project produced 6 affordable homes again within budget. The newly constructed houses are equipped with amenities and changes that have increased the house value while maintaining the low cost for homeowners. To date, 4 of the 6 homes are occupied by new homeowners. The other 2 applicants are currently awaiting the approval of their pension drawdown to assist the bank's required mortgage deposit. The Trust is seeking to further develop and to facilitate 7 more houses. The land is cleared and the Trust is waiting on a final planning approval to commence this project. Mr. Speaker, the Trust has also progressed with securing vacant land as it plans for the future development. To this end, the Trust has obtained 11 acres in Northside and 25 acres in Georgetown. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, the current ongoing projects in 2019 relate to the further development of Phase 2 in West Bay to facilitate 14 to 20 houses on available land in the new site. The subdivision plan and the stormwater management have been pre-approved, and the Trust is now at the stage of submitting the final subdivision and house plans for final approval. Mr. Speaker, the Trust is in the final stages of assisting a family under its remit of Build on Your Own Property program, and is proud to confirm that this too has been completed on time and within budget. Looking ahead, I would now like to highlight some of the Department of Environment plans for the next 2 years. Mr. Speaker, the DOE will continue to work with the National Conservation Council to support government in advancing the protection of key terrestrial and marine habitats. They will also continue with implementation of key provisions of the National Conservation Law, such as the development of species conservation plans and management plans for protected areas. The DOE will also continue the program aimed at effective control of the invasive green iguana on Grand Cayman as well as the sister islands. Mr. Speaker, the DOE will assist the government with the development of national climate change policies and adoption and mitigation strategies for key sectors. The DOE will continue to provide technical advice, guidance to Cabinet and other government agencies on plans, projects, and policies likely to have an adverse impact on the natural environment and resources. And looking ahead for housing, finally, Mr. Speaker, I would like to speak to the plans of the National Housing Development Trust for the upcoming financial period. The Trust will continue its efforts to keep moving ahead with the various housing programs that are designed to help Caymanians achieve their dream of home ownership. As the Honorable Premier has mentioned in his speech, the Government Guaranteed Home Assisted Mortgage Program, GGHAM, will be relaunched once government and participating banks finalize and sign the necessary agreements. I thank the participating banks for their willingness to embark on this program again, and I know that there will be many Caymanians who will also be grateful for the support when they are able to achieve home ownership through this program. The GGHAM program has assisted 325 families from 2008 to 2012, and the Trust is looking forward to again assisting as many families as possible under this program. Mr. Speaker, the new Affordable Housing Initiative program continues to provide affordable housing to Caymanians. It gives our people help towards owning the affordable houses and to have been constructed that have been constructed in East End, West Bay, Georgetown, and Bordentown. Between 2010 and 2019, the Trust constructed 116 houses wherein a total of 81 families achieved the dream of home ownership by purchasing these houses outright. I look forward to seeing further new affordable homes being made available to deserving families who will have the privilege of owning their own home. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, I wish to thank everyone in the ministry who has contributed to provide me with all the necessary support in my ministerial council role. There is a great deal of work to be done in the months and years ahead, but I am confident that with continued diligence, much progress will be made. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and may God continue to bless these Cayman Islands.
Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? If no other member wishes to speak, I call on the Honorable Premier, Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, firstly, I want to congratulate you on your 35 years serving this country. Just want to note that I was still in school then. And it's truly a milestone. Over the years, I must admit, it was you provoking me over the years and encouraging me. In fact, it was provoking. To get in this thing called politics, and first being elected with your team, and quite a memorable journey. And you have truly done a lot for this country over the last 35 years. Many milestones, opening many doors for the people of this wonderful country. And I want to thank you for all that you have done, serving in almost every role that you can serve in politics. Mr. Speaker, this is my second and the last one of this 2017-2021 term. And I'm honored to be a part of this unit of government and all the things we have achieved together. And the state of healthiness, Mr. Speaker, we are leaving government's affairs in. Very prudent, yet bold. And some may suggest that we may be working as marionettes or puppets, but I can tell you that this team understands and appreciates and is constantly trying to balance all. We too understand the hardships versus the budget and its complement, as we understand what is expected from us, as we are all God-fearing people. And in fact, if I must quote, since the member from Savannah has been quoting from the Bible, I want to remind this honorable House some of the principles that this very same unit of government, as God-fearing people, when I hear them get up and talk about how healthy the budget is and what we're doing for the poor and what we're doing for the needy, I remind them of Psalms 41, 1-2. Blessed is the one who considers the poor in the day of trouble. The Lord delivers him, the Lord protects him, and keeps him alive. He is called blessed in the land. You do not give him up to the will of his enemies. Whoever is generous to the poor lends to the Lord, and he will repay him for his deed. Proverbs 19:17. Mr. Speaker, I want to reflect before I even get into the real details of my ministries, the ministers that have been entrusted to myself. The Honorable Minister of Finance and Economic Development, in his speech and his contribution, made note that the annual operating revenues of $825 million in 2020 and $849.7 million in 2021. This strong revenue position reflects that the country's track record of economic growth is expected to continue without increasing the tax burden on Caymanian families. Mr. Speaker, why am I regurgitating these stuff, pointing these out again? Because I want to show the public the understanding that we have a good situation where we have a healthy budget and the work that we have done to ensure that the people of this country benefits from a healthy budget. Mr. Speaker, the Cayman Islands ranks 7th in the world with a budget surplus equal to 4.4% of our GDP, just behind Hong Kong, which reported a surplus of 5.2% GDP. Many countries, Mr. Speaker, including a large number who criticize Cayman's tax-neutral status, are running significant budget deficits. Mr. Speaker, the Premier's contribution highlighted our efforts as a government to ensure that the regular common man could benefit from the healthiness of this budget. Mr. Speaker, in the Premier's contribution, he set out to say that the budget provides full effect of the stamp duty concession that we put in place for first-time Caymanian buyers. This allows homes up to $400,000 to be purchased stamp duty-free. Mr. Speaker, based on 7.5% stamp duty on this property, the amount of savings would be $30,000. This policy change is already proven effective, and many Caymanian families have already benefited, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I go on to note that the budget again provides more support for seafarers veterans, an increase 1st of January to $850, and will go a further $100 in 2021 to $950. This is an increase, Mr. Speaker, of some 73%. So, Mr. Speaker, I could go on noting a lot of the things that the Premier mentioned in his contribution. I thought I'd note that because we are debating and giving our contribution on the budget. And as Mother Teresa said, you have never really lived until you have done something for someone who can never repay you. Mr. Speaker, although just like how we handle our personal finances, not just because we get a big lump sum means that we need to go and blow it all, we'll put some away for rainy days, just like the government has to do to ensure that our reserves are healthier also. In case of hurricanes, which we're still in hurricane season, downturn in the economy, recessions, we must be prepared. Mr. Speaker, I understand too well some of the politics that is played in this country, and it is very concerning as a Caymanian. Some of what we've been hearing. I'm wondering if you're trying to see how divided we can get the country. Never before have I seen this style from all different angles, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to also offer my condolences the Premier, the passes of his father. May God comfort his family. Mr. Speaker, it is a tremendous honor for me to stand in this honorable house to offer my contribution to the debate of this 2020-2021 budget and the throne speech. This budget, Mr. Speaker, represents a second two-year budget for the Cayman Islands government and the government of the national unity. Mr. Speaker, I know that you appreciate, as many of us do in this honorable house, that unless we ensure that we have a growing economy, we will not have the business that generates the revenue that government depends on to provide services which our people require. Revenues earned from financial services, tourism, development, and all other sectors help us fund our health services, education, social services, and welfare as security services such as police, fire, prison, customs and border, and so on. Mr. Speaker, over the past 2 years budget cycle, I've found that there has been much work that has been happening and progress being made. However, as we all know, there is still much to be done. Far too many people are suffering in a country that is considered to be a rich country. And, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the Honorable Premier for seeing whatever he saw in me and asking me to come over and join this government to make my contribution. Speaker, I know the importance of being around the table. I know the importance. And I don't want to be a career backbencher. I want to be able to give my contribution. I don't have to conform to anything. But I can say that working with this unit of government over the past 2.5 years, it has been a pleasure. My voice is heard, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Premier.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that Standing Order 10-2 be suspended in order that the House may continue to sit beyond the hour of interruption.
Question is that the Honorable House do continue after the hour of interruption. So that we can continue till at least 8 o'clock. All in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for allowing me to continue until 8 o'clock. Mr. Speaker, as Minister, I would like to take this opportunity to update the members of this honorable House and the country on some of the work that has been done during the current budget cycle of 2018-2019. Before I move on to outlining my ministry's plans for the upcoming budget period of 2020-2021. Mr. Speaker, the current financial cycle saw many outcomes for the ministry and the agencies under my remit as we worked extremely hard to deliver our outputs with the resources available. The ministry spans a broad range of subject areas, so I will take some time to address each in turn, starting with the subject area of health. The area of health regulation and policy. The ministry has made progress on several fronts. Looking first at the Department of Health Regulatory Services, Mr. Speaker, I would like to thank the Director and the hard-working staff at the department for their efforts, as well as the members of the Health Insurance Commission and its chair, and the various councils for the time that they give in helping to ensure that healthcare practitioners who deliver healthcare services in the Cayman Islands are appropriately qualified and experienced, and that healthcare facilities are held to appropriate patient safety standards. As at the 31st of October 2019, there were a total of 156 registered healthcare facilities. Mr. Speaker, in continuing to focus on health, we'd now like to speak to some of the work that has been done in the area of mental health. The global statistics suggest that 1 in 5 people suffer with mental health issues, which is a staggering figure, Mr. Speaker. The Cayman Islands are facing a similar level of incidents, including our children. Mr. Speaker, if we do not identify and flag incidents in children early enough and get them appropriately helped, then in many cases they will have many more challenges as they progress into adulthood. It is an area of our overall health, Mr. Speaker, that I believe we all need to increase our focus on if we hope to achieve optimal health and well-being for all. I'm pleased to report, Mr. Speaker, that the Mental Health Commission has continued to meet on a regular basis to address the many important issues around mental health in the Cayman Islands. The 9-member commission is chaired by Dr. Mark Lockhart and has a broad mandate regarding mental health in the Cayman Islands. They have been working to increase awareness, particularly with training of frontline staff such as police officers, social workers, and healthcare workers. I am confident that the work which they do and the advice they give to my ministry will help to improve all aspects of mental health in the Cayman Islands. Mr. Speaker, that is why I am especially pleased that this government has made significant progress in the area of mental health, and that the long-awaited long-term residential mental health facility has now started construction. This is a major priority project for the government and one which the whole country will be proud of. Let me expound a bit more on this significant achievement as we seek to care for the most vulnerable in our community. Mr. Speaker, this facility, which sits on 15 acres of land in East End, will offer patients medical and social supervision in a therapeutic environment. The facility will provide long-term residential mental health services to patients returning from overseas and to those currently on island who are currently underserved and who can benefit from residential care. Mr. Speaker, family and friends will be able to visit regularly, whereas currently they are often separated for months or years when persons are sent to facilities overseas. The facility will house residents who are chronically mentally ill, who are receiving rehabilitative care to allow them to live independently in the community. The facility includes a main building and 9 cottages, each of which can accommodate 6 residents. Varied activities will be available to residents such as arts and crafts, cooking, and other therapeutic activities. Mr. Speaker, residents will not be confined to their rooms, but will be unable to leave the premises. While the expected length of stay is expected to be between 12 and 18 months, there will be some persons requiring a longer course of treatment that could exceed 24 months. A few residents will stay indefinitely. Mr. Speaker, when completed, the facility will allow residents to remain in familiar surroundings where they will receive treatment and care in a supportive environment and within their own culture in appropriate conditions and accommodation. Mr. Speaker, I can tell you that I want to thank caucus and the cabinet for the support that they gave the ministry, myself, in taking this mental health facility that's been talked about for many, many years forward. And without their support, we would have not been able to break ground. And I want to thank them. Staying with the topic of mental health, Mr. Speaker, I would like to speak to some of the work that has been done by the Department of Counseling Services, which includes the Family Resource Center, the Counseling Center, and the Caribbean Haven Residential Center. Mr. Speaker, during the past year, programs and services offered by the Department of Counseling Services were expanded or enhanced to more effectively address a broad range of emerging needs in our society and to improve the functioning of those who access those services. The expansion also includes Cayman BRAC to more adequately meet the demand for therapeutic services. Mr. Speaker, work is being carried out to bring about early interventions within families throughout school-based programs at the primary level that teaches effective emotion regulation and self-control to children ages 6 and 11. This is very important, Mr. Speaker. I've been talking about this for a very long time. Thereby decreasing their aggression, enhancing their success in school, and ultimately delaying or reducing their involvement with the criminal justice system. In addition, there was also the expanded therapeutic program for adolescents at the community level. Mr. Speaker, the introduction of dual diagnosis component in the treatment program at the Caribbean Haven Residential Center will allow for the concurrent treatment of those suffering from a mental health disorder and a substance abuse disorder. Mr. Speaker, continued enhancement and expansion of the family therapy services to broaden the range of services are available to those residents of our community who may be struggling with issues such as trauma, grief, depression, and anxiety, and substance abuse. Mr. Speaker, regarding the work of the National Drug Council, over the past financial period, I am pleased to advise the members of this Honorable House that the National Drug Council has continued their efforts to educate and prevent drug and alcohol abuse on many fronts. Mr. Speaker, during the 2018-2019, the National Drug Council facilitated over 500 prevention and education-based activities throughout schools, prisons, and communities. Mr. Speaker, there are plans for this week to have the program Youth to Youth and the National Drug Council work in partnership with the Pirates Week Festival to host the annual Teen Up event, which is a safe drug and alcohol-free teen event in conjunction with the Pirates Week festivities. Mr. Speaker, this is an invaluable service to our teens in providing them with an opportunity, with an appropriately suitable environment in which to enjoy themselves. Mr. Speaker, the final report from the Cayman Islands Student Drug Use Survey 2018 was completed along with the administration of Her Majesty's Cayman Islands Prison in May 2019. The Cayman Islands Student Drug Use Survey is an ongoing study of the behaviors, attitudes, and values of school-age students. This study describes the extent and patterns of alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs used among students ages 11 and older across the islands and contributes to a better understanding of both the current and changing rates of alcohol, tobacco, and other drug abuse. Mr. Speaker, such monitoring is fundamental to government, educators, public, and the general public. A couple key results from the survey noted that the primary drug of choice amongst the Cayman Islands students is alcohol, 54.4%, followed by electronic cigarettes, 32.8%, and marijuana, 29.8%. The current use of substances, which was not prevalent amongst older students, years 9 to 12, was alcohol use at 31.3%, marijuana at 14.6%, and electronic cigarettes at 12.4%. Mr. Speaker, we need to get a grip on this. Mr. Speaker, gender differences were apparent for both the lifetime and the current use prevalence. Males were more likely to use electronic cigarettes, marijuana, energy drinks, tranquilizers, and be involved in binge drinking, while females were more likely to use alcohol and cigarettes. Mr. Speaker, being able to monitor and provide appropriate interventions, methods are critical, which is my ministry is committed to continuing the support of the important work of the National Drug Council in the upcoming budget periods. Mr. Speaker, in an effort to address the drug problem on our islands, specifically relating to alcohol and driving under the influence, the National Drug Council will once again this year run the hashtag Arrive Alive 345 Purple Ribbon Pledge campaign. This is combining of efforts to engage our community to take the pledge, designate a driver, and utilize the New Year's Eve Purple Ribbon bus. The program will now encompass the annual 6-week Purple Ribbon Pledge, focusing on encouraging drivers to take a pledge not to drink and drive over the holidays, followed by the Designation Driver campaign beginning on the 1st of December, where all participating bars and restaurants offer patrons who identify themselves as a designated driver free non-alcoholic drinks. The hashtag Arrive Alive 345 Purple Ribbon Pledge campaign will end on December 31st with the New Year's Eve Purple Ribbon bus service. Together, the combining of the campaigns will emphasize the overarching message, Arrive Alive, don't drink and drive. Mr. Speaker, I would like to sincerely thank the former director and now the current acting director, and to ensure the team at the National Drug Council for their efforts as we continue to work with our citizens of all ages in striving to achieve a more safe and healthy Cayman Islands for all. Mr. Speaker, I am pleased to confirm the successful recruitment to the very important role of Chief Medical Officer within the ministry. This role has been vacant for quite some time, and the ministry is now well placed to progress many of the tasks at hand. I am pleased that the CMO and I recently had a very productive meeting to address the latest social trend of vaping, among other key topics. Mr. Speaker and members of this Honorable House, recent media reports have noted several deaths and several thousands of persons as sustaining long injury in the USA from vaping, which it seems has been linked to a vitamin E acetate, which is used as an addictive and an additive in the production of e-cigarettes vaping products. The USA has not had controls on vaping in many states, whereas in the UK, there has been strict regulations around e-cigarettes for many years. Mr. Speaker, the pattern of lung injury in the USA has not been seen in Europe. The ministry has produced an update on the tobacco law to include e-cigarettes and has modeled the controls around those employed in the UK. With the support of the health policy team, the ministry is in the process of working on a formal request to the Cabinet seeking approval to request drafting instructions on this very important matter. Mr. Speaker, the connection between nutrition and health was explored at the 10th annual Health Conference, which took place in late September. And I'm pleased to advise that over the course of the conference, over 1,000 delegates attended to hear from our excellent local and overseas speakers and to learn firsthand about the latest information on some practical tips to help them translate that information into action. It is my sincere hope, Mr. Speaker, that everyone who attended the conference, including myself, will make a commitment to themselves to make some positive changes, no matter how small, to improve their personal health and well-being. It is often the small, sustainable changes, Mr. Speaker, that add up to big benefits. Mr. Speaker, we will continue to explore new methods to ensure that next year's conference will have even more opportunities for persons to sign up to attend the conference, as some has reported difficulties in doing so. And this is way too important for the community not to maximize on the opportunity to attend. Mr. Speaker, while there have been challenges, and I will speak to these later in the Health Services Authority, we did have successes in the 2018-2019 financial year. Mr. Speaker, the Health Services Authority achieved a clean audit opinion for the first time in the organization's history, which means that the authority met and exceeded all compliances and statutory financial requirement as prescribed in the Health Services Authority law, the Public Management and Finance law, the Public Authorities law for prudent financial management. This is a significant achievement and one with authorities should be commended. Mr. Speaker, the Health Services Authority was also able to outsource its bad debt collection to an external agency to recover amounts previously deemed uncollectible, which has yielded positive financial returns. In addition, Mr. Speaker, the authority has revisited and put into place ways to strengthen the procurement process through policy revisions with the intentions to improve contract management and financial controls, including stringent oversight of expenditure and vendor contracts for travel and business-related expenses. Mr. Speaker, a consequence of growth in the population is the increasing demand for healthcare services. This demand then places a significant strain on the existing facilities and resources at the hospital. The current facility was built for a population of 33,000 people, Mr. Speaker. However, statistics has indicated that we are now approaching population of near 70,000. Mr. Speaker, to better meet the healthcare needs of the Cayman Islands population and improve the patient's experience, the authority is expanding its services to the Smith Road Center in 2020, which will include a pharmacy and other clinical services. This expansion is intended to contribute to the reduction in waiting times from the highly congested Cayman Islands Hospital campus. Mr. Speaker, I would like to express sincere gratitude for the support from the private sector community as the Health Services Authority was able to acquire a golf cart for the transportation of its patients with mobility challenges across the hospital campus. A seemingly small gesture, but one which has had a positive impact, only proves what can be achieved as we work together for the betterment of all. The sister islands will also benefit from a new physiotherapy facility, as well as a materials management facility for the proper storage of supplies, equipment, and medications. Mr. Speaker, earlier this year, the Health Services Authority was able to launch the online booking tool, which featured the electronic reminders of upcoming appointments made, in addition to a call center to reduce patients' no-show, waiting times, and access to care. Through the collaboration with Radio Cayman, the Health Services Authority brand has initiated a weekly radio interview to create awareness of the services and programs available at our Health Services Authority. This newly implemented strategy was the result of a recently recruited marketing and communications manager and support staff. Mr. Speaker, in an effort to address the matter of lowering the cost of health care in the Cayman Islands, the Health Services Authority, in collaboration with the Ministry of Health, is in discussions with the Pan American Health Organization, PAHO, to expand their existing partnership for the purchase of prescription medication through PAHO's Strategic Fund. The Strategic Fund is a regional technical cooperation mechanism for pooled procurement of around 50 essential medications with continuous assured availability at low cost. The Strategic Fund additionally ensures the supply of quality products through the application of quality assurance norms in PAHO's pharmaceutical procurement process and technical support in the procurement process to the participating members. Mr. Speaker, PAHO projects anticipated savings by as much as 33% from purchasing through this arrangement, which are achieved through economies of scale and a competitive pricing available to the 33 member nations taking part in this initiative. Discussions to broaden the existing arrangement for purchase of medicines are at a primary stage, but already the Health Services Authority has seen as much as 90% cost reduction in the antiretroviral treatments of HIV, for example. Mr. Speaker, the Health Services Authority will continue with its traditional procurement methods for many prescription drugs in PAHO. In this PAHO initiative is focused on a very limited subset of essential medicines. The ministry has two other health-related agencies, the Department of Environmental Health and the Mosquito Research and Control Unit. MRCU continued to provide its usual outstanding levels of service of mosquito control. They continued their control efforts against disease-carrying mosquitoes with an emphasis on the prevention of local transmission of dengue, chikungunya, Zika, and malaria. Their efforts in this regard including house-to-house inspections, ground and aerial applications, and perimeter treatments. Mr. Speaker, it is also important to note that the unit simultaneously continued its work to control the domestic pest mosquitoes, mealy swamp, and pasture land mosquito species that are a biting nuisance on all three islands. Control of these is important from an economic as well as a quality of life perspective. The unit has continued to utilize aircraft for conventional insecticidal control and ground fogging vehicles to reduce and control the number of adult biting mosquitoes. As a member of this Honorable House will be aware, we are currently experiencing some cases of dengue. The latest update received as of last Friday, November 8th, 2019, regarding the dengue case in the Cayman Islands. These currently stand at 9 locally transmitted and 6 imported cases, for a total of 15 cases. I seek to emphasize in this honorable House that it is due to the ongoing successful collaborative effort by the MRCU and the diligent healthcare staff at the Public Health Department of Health Services Authority why we are able to closely monitor and mitigate the rapid growth of what could have become an epidemic in the Cayman Islands. To this end, I wish to thank the Director and his staff at the MRCU and the Medical Officer of Health and his staff at the Public Health Department for their continuing efforts in this regard. Mr. Speaker, equally important is the work of the Department of Environmental Health. Over the past financial period, the hard-working team at the department continued to deliver the services that are so essential to the public health in the Cayman Islands. The DEH is currently responsible for providing the following: efficient and effective refuge collection and disposal service through friendly and professional staff, improving tourist accommodation, pool and air quality and food inspectors through compliance, maintaining a consistent, fair, and open policy when handling complaints, queries, and public concerns, improving the ability to better monitor and control the growth of the landfill, improving the recycling efforts throughout the islands, assisting our local law enforcement partners with the enforcement of environmental laws. In June 2019, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Richard Sims was appointed as the Director of DEH. He is assisted by the Assistant Director of Environmental Health, Dr. Paulino Rodriguez, and Assistant Director of Solid Waste, Mr. Michael Hayworth. Together, they bring a wealth of knowledge and experience and are committed to moving the DEH forward in a positive light in accordance with the responsibilities previously outlined. Since taking over DEH, the Director has introduced measures to streamline operational budget, demand greater fiscal responsibility, and value for money. Over the past year, the department focused on key areas to improve its productivity. Some of these included providing technical staff with relevant training and workshop attendance in an effort to develop employees' skill and abilities, focusing on the employee to become better, more efficient in what they do, thus reducing overall costs. Ensuring proper maintenance of the DEH by effectively implementing sound facility management practices. These measures include keeping all building systems and equipment up to date and running efficiently, keeping the facility clean and maintaining security, therefore with the aim of saving the government's money in the long run by reducing utility costs, employee injuries, and eliminating expensive emergency service calls. The DEH received a total of $4.2 million in capital funding to purchase well-needed garbage trucks, other vehicles, commercial containers, and other equipment. We are happy to report that 11 new garbage trucks consisting of 5 rear loaders, 3 front-end loaders, 2 roll-on, roll-off, and 1 grapple truck have been ordered and expedited to be delivered early in 2020. I must report, Mr. Speaker, that some of the smaller vehicles have already arrived. With the increase in the number of garbage trucks, the DEH will be able to manage the collection routes much better. 200 commercial containers have also been ordered to replace the dilapidated ones currently in service. The recycling program and awareness is growing along with the number of requests for more service, both internally and externally. As a result, this increase of the scheme, we will require a small number of processors to service the demand in recyclable collections across the island. As a part of the early works of the Integrated Solid Waste Management Systems, as we know it, ISWIMS, In January 2019, the department commenced baling of metals, including old vehicles at the landfill, placing them in containers and shipping them overseas. To date, we have shipped 3,854 metric tons of metal from the Georgetown landfill. This ought to be applauded, Mr. Speaker. Derelict vehicles since the program began, the DEH removed approximately 255 vehicles from across the island to the landfill or processor. The process for removing a derelict vehicle under the law is that once the DEH sticker has been placed on the vehicle, the owner has 24 hours to remove the vehicle, otherwise it will be towed for destruction. The Memorandum of Understanding with the Prison Service. The department has partnered with the Prison Service since December 2018, utilizing prisoners to assist with the solid waste section of the department. This program is going very well, and all parties are benefiting from it. There are currently 5 prisoners taking part in this program. The department continues to booster its efforts to ensure that all food operators in the islands are trained in food hygiene. These efforts are certainly contributed to keeping foodborne illnesses to a minimum. Mr. Speaker, the islands are growing. The waste amounts are increasing. With the increase in current levels of staffing, the equipment that is on the way, and the plans for the investment in a proper recycling facility in the Cayman Islands, I am confident that we will continue to see improvements in the collection service, landfill operations, and recycling within our beloved islands. This government is committed to ensuring that Caymanians benefit from a healthy environment. Mr. Speaker, I am also happy to report that in the past fiscal cycle, another long-standing problem, the tire stockpile, was dealt with. It is no longer an eyesore and a hazard. It is also important to note, Mr. Speaker, that the product of the shredding is a tire-derived aggregate which is used locally. It's in keeping with our drive for sustainability and embracing the principles of reduce, reduce, recycle, and then dispose as outlined in our National Solid Waste Management Policy. Mr. Speaker, finally, but very importantly, on the topic of waste management, I would like to note the recent progress which has been made in continuing negotiations for the new Integrated Solid Waste Management System, ISWIMS. As was announced recently in conjunction with the preferred bidder, the government is progressing with the contract negotiations towards an agreed final contract. Despite some delays previously, Mr. Speaker, I am pleased that progress is continuing with the ISWIMS and that we are currently looking at commencing the capping and remediation as part of the early works process in early 2020. Mr. Speaker, members recall that the ISWIMS project includes several components, including composting, further expanded household waste recycling, waste to energy, and closure of the existing landfills. I am very excited about the recent progress that has been made so far, and I'm looking forward to seeing the process through to completion in the coming months ahead. Turning now to 2 subject areas of environment. The Department of Environment has had a very busy period with numerous important issues to deal with. I have the much appreciated assistance of Captain Eugene to assist me with these matters in his capacity as Ministerial Counsel for Environment and Housing. And as you heard earlier, his update on these subjects in his budget address. Mr. Speaker, I would like to note that later in my address I will have a few comments to make on a few key initiatives around the national conservation law and controlling of the nuisance green iguana. Mr. Speaker, the department continues to work with the National Conservation Council to support the government in advancing the protection of key terrestrial marine habitats. The Council continues with implementation of key provisions of the National Conservation Law, such as the development of species conservation plans and management plans for protected areas. 2 rounds of protected area purchases and designations were finalized, including protected area designations of Crown land and land newly acquired by the Crown, all in 2017. A 3rd round of terrestrial protected area nominations was taken through the NCL statutory public consultation period in 2018, and a presentation on the results was made to caucus in 2019. A management plan was developed in the Amiga Bay Pond protected area, as you heard, which will be considered by the NCC in December, prior to the plan being put out to public consultation. Work has also begun towards a management plan for the Hemington Forest National Park in Cayman. Mr. Speaker, I am extremely happy to confirm that programs are in effect to control the invasive green iguanas on Grand Cayman as well as the sister islands. With approximately 500 cullers recruited, a cull management contractor was appointed, and well over 1 million green iguanas have been culled, all within a 12-month period from October 2018 to October 2019. Mr. Speaker, I believe that all members of this Honorable House can attest to the positive results which has been achieved with this program, as we have witnessed firsthand the dramatic reduction in the green iguana population. A special thanks to the Director and her staff for their continuing positive results in this regard. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank caucus and the Cabinet for assisting in the approval of this method. The reason why it took so long to start, Mr. Speaker, is because the members of caucus was not satisfied that all could benefit from this program. And we hashed it out over a couple of weeks, came up with this plan, which has served all, and most are happy with. And I want to thank the members of caucus and Cabinet. Mr. Speaker, members who know me will know that I have a lifelong love of culture and performing arts, particularly in the music and the visual arts, and that I am passionate when it comes to culture overall. I believe, Mr. Speaker, that culture is a subject area that is integral to several aspects of our life in our islands, in particular because of our history of welcoming so many people of other nationalities to our shores. The work of the cultural entities and individuals is essential to protecting and promoting our culture and our heritage, and I believe that we need to do more to value their work and their contributions. The Cayman Islands National Museum efforts over the past year included several inspirational exhibitions, and to date has acquired over 9,500 artifacts. The museum is currently in the planning stages with the National Culture and Heritage Policy and Strategic Plan for the Cayman Islands, and working in cooperation with the Ministry to operationalize this policy and strategic plan. Including this initiative will be in investigations and intentions to update the legislation in cooperation with other partners such as the National Trust, DOE, and the National Archives. Mr. Speaker, the Cayman National Cultural Foundation has also had a busy and productive year. Mr. Speaker, there are 130 artworks in the National Collection of Gladwin K. Bush artworks, which are maintained in a stable environment to international standards for art collections. The entire collection of Gladwin Bush artworks are regularly inspected and individual objects treated as necessary by a specialist art conservator. Other initiatives during this year include monthly tours of Mind's Eye Cultural Heritage Site for the public schools, promotion of products exemplifying Cayman's intangible cultural heritage, such as the double CD Come Back Home, with traditional Cayman folk songs and instrumental kitchen band, music performed by the Cayman Islands folk singers and the Northside Kitchen Band, performances by the Cayman Islands folk singers at an average of 12 public appearances yearly, including Heroes Day, Parliamentary Association Reception, Celebrate Cayman Launch, and the Cayman Airways Aircraft Launch. Maintenance of 800 plus research library titles, materials, preserving, promoting Caymanian culture, and are reflective of a range of local artists, cultural organizations. Mr. Speaker, I had the esteemed privilege of attending as Minister of Culture, at first I believe for the Cayman Islands, and participating at the Caribbean Festival of the Arts, CarFesta, with the largest ever Cayman Islands contingent to the Caribbean Festivals of Arts. These included 49 delegates, 18 overseas performances, grand market displays and demonstrations. Mr. Speaker, our island have much to be proud of as we showcase and promote our unique heritage and culture. The CNCF also provided financial grants to artists in the performing and literary arts, as well as film, over 170,000 in grants, and have been disbursed since the program started in 2004. The annual summer arts camp for students aged 6 to 16, focusing on 6 district performing and heritage arts, 6 distinct performing and heritage arts. I thank the director and staff of the CNCF for their continued positive efforts and contribution. Staying with the subject area of culture, Mr. Speaker, I would now like to touch on some of the achievements of the National Gallery of the Cayman Islands. But before I go on, I want to say that all the people in this honorable house and the wider community, listening community, if you haven't had a chance, please go down and see Rundown. I went and I enjoyed myself. It was 2 hours of fun without the phone, and they're talking about some of your most popular politicians and some right in here, and also other people in the community. So I encourage you to go down and support the Rundown, the long-standing Rundown. As of November 1st, 2019, the National Gallery had reached 3,977 local students through education, programming, and school exhibition or collection tours, and recorded 19,414 overall visitors in the gallery exhibition programs in 2019 year to date. These figures are expected to be 23,000 overall visitors, from which 4,500 are students at the year's end. The National Gallery also executed an average of 40 educational programs, events, lectures per month. These figures are remarkable and shows much work being done in these areas to benefit Caymanians, residents, and visitors alike. Mr. Speaker, the National Gallery launched the inaugural Cayman Islands Biennial in 2019, a multi-site art project with exhibitions running simultaneously in Grand Cayman and Little Cayman, and a public art project in Cayman Brac. In total, 42 artists were featured in the biennial, each having successfully completed a juried process. The exhibition opened on the 8th of February to an audience of over 300 guests and was followed by a weekend of lectures and workshops for artists. The extensive education program of workshops, panel discussions, screening, and lectures was designed to provide developmental support for the art community, as well as to introduce the public to both established and emerging artists. The broad range of topics include portfolio clinics, writing workshops, how to set up a creative business that is profitable, how to connect to galleries, collectors, and dealers, how to market artwork, updates of intellectual property, and copyright laws that concern artists, hosted under the umbrella of National Gallery ongoing Business of Art series. The National Gallery also developed and launched the Art at the Airport program in support of the opening of the redeveloped Owen Roberts International Airport. The inaugural program featured 5 National Gallery exhibitions ranging from Caymanian craft to architectural heritage to photography to a celebration of the island's maritime heritage through art. The National Gallery also hosted 6 traveling exhibitions in the sister islands in 2019, with related school tours and workshops for each. The National Gallery developed the Bendel Hides, a retrospective exhibition and related publication. With support from my ministry, the aim of the project was to create the most comprehensive survey of Bendel's career undertaken to date. This has included a fuller comprehensive documentation of Bendel's personal collection, life, and related ephemera, sketchbooks, photographs, diaries, catalogs. Subsequently, they have professionally photographed 400 plus artworks between Cayman and New York and managed the professional packing and shipping of all those artworks and materials back to Cayman. The exhibition is scheduled to feature 80 artworks along with a video of the artists, and the publication will feature a full art history, biography, and over 200 plates. I encourage members and the public at large to visit the National Gallery for a look at this extraordinary exhibition featuring one of our own well-accomplished Caymanian artists. Mr. Speaker, the National Gallery also completed 2 publication projects relating to the Caymanian art. The first was the Cayman Islands Biennial Catalog, featuring essays on contemporary Caymanian art, along with the image plates and biographies for each of the 42 featured artists. The second publication was a 200-page career survey of Bendel Hides. Both books will be gifted to all schools and libraries in the Cayman Islands. The National Gallery also hosted 1 international museum conference, the Museum Store Association, during September 2019 as a part of the National Gallery's international growth strategy, enabling free workshops on museum retail development to our museum and heritage colleagues in Cayman. I wish to express my sincere thanks to the director of the National Gallery and her staff for their continued hard work and positive contributions to the development of art in these islands. As I wrap up my review of the 2018-2019 financial years, I would like to look at the National Housing and Development Trust, which has been working to progress plans for affordable homes for all Caymanians. As you heard earlier, the contribution from a member from West Bay Central, the councillor. I want to applaud the National Housing Development Trust, chairman, the board, and the staff for all the work that they have done over the past 2.5 years and longer, some, in the purchasing of land for Georgetown, some 25 acres, the north side, some 11 acres, and homes being built in West Bay and East End and Bordentown. And we have further discussions to go, Mr. Speaker. We're getting queries from persons throughout the public for an even lower element of affordable housing and also a notch above what we're now offering. So it's something that we need to consider as to how we approach the future, and if we continue doing what we do, the way we do it, with the same set of plans, I ought to think that we need to change it up and try to utilize as much land as possible to house as much people as possible, but not to create what they would call in the US projects, but lovely communities where children and people can live and be in unity. So I've had some discussions with the chairman, and they're looking at some new drawings as we speak. They've had to change their architect. So, Mr. Speaker, a lot of good work going on there, and we'll report more at a later date. Mr. Speaker, I trust that all members will agree much work has been done on this subject under my ministry. Our work continues, however, there's still to be a lot to be done. And I would like to turn my attention now to the 2020-2021 budget years and to highlight a few of the key objectives and plans for this period. As I noted, while reports indicate that there has been much achieved over the past year, I believe in some respects the work is just getting started and there's much more to be done. Starting in the area of health, the HSA will continue to focus efforts on lowering the cost of health care as a main goal. Increasing access to care and services is another goal. The government is committed to achieving all the targets of the World Health Organization, Sustainable Development Goals for Health, one of which is increasing access to care and services for the population which we serve. Among the initiatives being pursued is the expansion of access at the district level, which include the planned construction of a new satellite hospital and emergency medical response center in Bordentown to serve the eastern districts. There have been many contributions in terms of suggestions about this facility, and some has been noted, but I do believe that we need a new facility, without a doubt. The current clinic that we have has served us well, and if one could only remember 2004 and Hurricane Ivan, there were objects floating from across the road that floated to the door of this clinic. The clinic is kind of low. So we definitely need a new site. And we need a new facility also. It's a growing district. It's the fastest growing district. And this was recommended by the surveys done by a firm that was hired by the HSA as the best place to put a new satellite space. The new facility will replace the existing Bordentown Health Center and offer a range of expanded and new clinical services, including dialysis and physiotherapy services. With the increase of lifestyle-related illnesses and the resulting growing number of dialysis patients, the authority will begin a phased expansion of dialysis services to the district health centers with plans for a small unit at the West Bay Health Center in 2020. Mr. Speaker, caring for the vulnerable population groups is another area of focus for the future. Protection and support for the most vulnerable groups in any society is a fundamental responsibility of any government, particularly concerning their health care needs. The increasing number of children and young adults diagnosed with mental health disorder requires action. A new adolescent mental health hub will be established at the HSA in 2020 to provide appropriate levels of care in a specialized setting for this age group. The HSA is also expanding its accident and emergency unit, A&E, with an additional bed capacity to improve the experience of patients and reduce waiting times. Mr. Speaker, I must say this is one of my pet peeves of the wait times that we experience in the A&E, and also the expansion of the pharmacy there. Two of my pet peeves. And I've been at this for some time now. It looks like it's going to happen. And I am encouraged that it will happen. But many have said, you think that's anything? Well, you should try this country and see how long they wait. And we should try this country and see how long they wait. I say, I really don't care how long no other country wait, but I want our people to get through in an efficient manner. So, I'm concerned with Cayman, and I know we have a small population in what we regard small population in regards to other countries, and there's no way that we shouldn't try to manage a small population at this time and manage it better. So I'm encouraged. The authority will also expand the operating hours of its acute clinic to 11 p.m. to provide more options to residents for non-life-threatening illnesses after the hours, with true emergencies appropriately being cared for at A&E. Another major initiative, Mr. Speaker, is the creation of a pediatric and adolescent acute care center, which will alleviate the need for children and adolescents to be treated in the ER during certain hours. Facility expansion is also a main goal in the upcoming fiscal period, a consequence of growth in the population and increasing demand for healthcare services, putting significant strain on the existing facility and resources at the hospital. As already highlighted, the current facility was built for a population of 33,000, which is now nearing 70,000. To better meet the healthcare needs of the population and improve the patient's experience, the HSA is expanding its services to the Smith Road Center in 2020, providing a better ambience, expanded clinical services, and reduced waiting times for the highly congested Cayman Islands Hospital campus. Mr. Speaker, the Sister Islands will also benefit from a new physiotherapy facility, as well as materials management facility for the proper storage of supplies, equipment, and medications. Other plans include the construction of a new accident and emergency radiology department to provide appropriate facilities for care, meet Joint Commission International Accreditation standards, and anticipated growth in population, increasing demand for care. Yeah. So, Mr. Speaker, the project in Cayman Brac has already started. So just as the Honorable House is apprised of this information. Mr. Speaker, with the advantages of technology to improve patient care and clinical outcomes, the authority is increasing its investment in new and advanced technology through the purchase of replacement equipment. Among the acquisitions are a new ambulance for Little Cayman Clinic, diagnostic equipment including C-arm and ultrasound machines, and telemedicine to improve timely access to clinical specialists in the care and treatment of certain patients. Mr. Speaker, turning now from the health services provision to the regulation of the health system. For the upcoming financial years, the Department of Health Regulatory Services, amongst other things, plan to pursue the purchase of a system which would allow healthcare practitioners to electronically file their applications for the renewal of their registration. The system would also provide an automated facility for the filing, maintenance, and tracking and retrieval of records. Additionally, the implementation of initiatives with supporting tools which would enable the Health Insurance Commission and the Health Practice Commission councils to carry out due diligence on best practices consistent with the health practice and health insurance legislations. To monitor and regulate the health insurance and healthcare marketplace are also planned for the upcoming financial years. Mr. Speaker, the Department of Counseling Services has plans to further enhance their services during 2020-21 budget period to include the continued expansion of family programs, and that will assist parents in the Cayman Islands to increase parental competency and to develop positive and effective parenting skills. The introduction of a dual diagnosis component in the treatment program at Caribbean Haven Residential Center will allow for the concurrent treatment of those suffering from a mental health disorder and a substance abuse disorder. The continued enhancement and expansion of family therapy services to broaden range of services available to those residents of our community who may be struggling with issues such as trauma, grief, depression, and anxiety, and substance abuse are also planned for the upcoming financial years. Mr. Speaker, expanded service provisions in Cayman Brac to more adequately meet the demand for therapeutic services. They will also be a part of the 2020-21 service delivery of the department. Early interventions within families through school-based programs at the primary level that teach effective emotion regulations and self-control to ages children 6 to 11, thereby decreasing their aggression, enhancing their success in school. Mr. Speaker, the Drug Council will continue their important work in the upcoming budget, including increased programming in schools to include primary schools throughout the year. The Mosquito Research Control Unit will continue its control efforts against the nuisance biting and disease vector mosquitoes. The ambitious but very timely goal, Mr. Speaker, is its new program, Aedes aegypti eradication. The unit aims to roll out a plan directed at eradication of this disease vector in 2020. This will require island-wide sustainable surveillance and control efforts. It will also include application of consumables, insecticides, enhancements to existing personnel, such as an education officer, GIS mapping officer, and part-time employees for fogging, and capital purchases to support ongoing efforts. Mr. Speaker, there are a number of important matters of the Department of Environment to deal with in the year ahead. Continue to work with the National Conservation Council to support government in advancing the protection of key terrestrial and marine habitats. Continue with the implementation of key provisions of the National Conservation Law. such as the development of species conservation plans and management plans for protected areas. Continue the program aimed at effective control of the invasive green iguana on Grand Cayman as well as the sister islands. Assist the government with developing a national climate change policy and adaptation and mitigation strategies for key sectors, and work towards the development of a much-needed office, workshop, and facility to accommodate the department staff while working on Cayman Brac. As I now turn to the policy in the area of culture and our plan for the upcoming 2 years, members will recall that the Cayman Islands' first national culture and heritage policy and strategic plan was tabled at previously in this honorable house. This 10-year policy and strategic plan was the result of many hours of work by the steering committee members and contributions from members of the public. It is a useful document, and I think we can all identify with the vision of safeguarding our heritage, living our culture. We are now taking steps to implement the policy and strategic plan, and to that end, the ministry will reconvene the steering committee in the new year to start working on action plans to make sure this policy is a living policy with some tangible achievements towards the vision embodied in it. In addition to the work of the implantation of the National Culture and Heritage Policy Strategic Plan, the three main national cultural organizations will continue their robust programming throughout the 2020-21 budget year. Having firmly established programming offerings, averaging 35 per month and exhibitions 10 per year at the central facility of the Easterly Tibbets Highway, with a commitment to continuing these new programs initiatives for 2020-2021 have been designed to promote access to culture and heritage for all residents, including those in the sister islands. The National Gallery's highlights focus primarily on this area based upon visitor statistics from the past 2 years, along with anticipated growth. The National Gallery anticipates providing cultural education to 5,000 plus students through programming, exhibitions, and collection tours, and career days in 2020, and reaching 24,000 general visitors. The National Gallery will carry out an average of 40 educational programs, events, lectures per month. The National Gallery will continue to host a vibrant exhibition schedule of 10 exhibitions at its Grand Cayman location, including exhibitions that focus on women's contribution to the development of modern-day Cayman, a retrospective of Caymanian sculpture, Horacio Esteban, traditional and contemporary Caymanian art, to name a few. The National Gallery will host 6 exhibitions of community interest per annum in the sister islands to ensure the Cayman Brac and Little Cayman communities regularly have access to original artworks and related education programming. These traveling exhibitions will also be adapted so they can be mounted in various district venues, libraries. In addition to the National Gallery will assist with the development of exhibitions in public spaces throughout the Cayman Islands, the Owen Roberts Airport, Georgetown Hospital, the Catboat Club, the Seafarers Association. Mr. Speaker, these are designed to provide support for organizations and creative projects that will help to further activate their venues with art and cultural heritage projects. The National Gallery Business of Art program will provide educational and professional development skills, small business advice for artists, creative entrepreneurs, and local educators in an effort to support the growth of creative community in the Cayman Islands. This involves regular workshops, an annual symposium, and professional advice on art careers and portfolios, etc. Funding would include the hosting of workshops and salaries for guest speakers, which from time to time would include international curators and gallerists. National Gallery will continue to focus on growth of the National Art Collection and related educational programming. This will include the expansion of Art on the Road, a collection-based education program. Mr. Speaker, I want to say I've been a big supporter of the National Gallery, and for the first time, as you have learned, the National Gallery, all of the paintings that they had there were for the local artists. So we came up with a program which have started from 2017 and which we continue. We buy local art from Caymanian artists every year, about 5 artists per year. And this year, Mr. Speaker, we hope to increase that to about 10 artists, doubling our efforts in purchasing Caymanian art. And I want to thank the National Gallery for pointing this out to me as something that they wanted to achieve over the years that they weren't able to achieve in purchasing Caymanian art. I'm glad to be able to be the minister and a part of the unity government to be able to do this. The Cayman Islands National Museum enhancement, improved safety and accessibility, fire suppression and wheelchair lift, and conduct research resulted in an old enhanced chronology and interpretation of the old courts building and old jail, undertaking special conservation measures for their long-term preservation, enhanced community engagement projects, programs, memberships, exhibits, Lokia events, speaker series, school tours, summer camps, CYSA, radio, social media presence, local shop, products, International Museum Day, museum's 30th and 31st anniversaries. Cayman Islands Maritime Archaeology Program, spearhead continued development of land-based maritime trails, shipwreck preserves, archaeological investigations, and updated legislation in cooperation with the maritime partners. National Cultural and Heritage Policy Day, work in cooperation with the Culture Ministry to operationalize the National Culture and Heritage Policy and Strategic Plan for the Cayman Islands. The National Museum aims to continue to offer their very informative program through the permanent galleries and their planned exhibition in changing galleries as the custodians of over 9,000 artifacts, literally pieces of our history. I'm sure the museum will continue to delight us with upcoming exhibitions. Preserving and celebrating cultural heritage of the Cayman Islands, in particular, the several aspects of our intangible cultural heritage, the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, defines intangible cultural heritage as traditions or living expressions inherited from our ancestors and passed on to our descendants, such as oral traditions, performing arts, social practices, rituals, festive events, knowledge and practice concerning nature and the universe of our knowledge and skills to produce traditional art crafts. CNCF programming in this area incorporates giving prominence to Cayman folk forms, in particular folk music, by training and presenting performances by the Cayman Islands folk singers, raising the public profile of Caymanian cultural treasures, living or dead. Gladwin Bush and Julia Hydes among them, developing teaching materials, products, and services for students and other APROPs in the Mind's Eye Heritage Site, publishing the Foundation Arts and Culture Journal, preserving the form of Caymanian language by publishing play scripts, presenting special events that shine a spot on the heritage and culture, such as a Dress for Culture Day, Summer Arts Camp, Christmas of Yesteryears, and the National Arts and Culture Awards. Facilitating the work of others and engaging in partnerships with their entities and groups desirous of promoting Caymanian heritage, culture, and the arts. Producing an oversight of the national cultural festivals and other public events, among them K-Fest, Cayman Islands National Festival of Arts in February and March, Cayman Carnival in May, Pirates Week, National Festival, Gimme Story, International Story Festival in December, and giving support to artists participating in international cultural showcase, such as Carifesta 2021, and as to shine a vivid light on talents, ingenuity, and multiplicity of creating expressions alive and flourishing in the Cayman Islands. Employing the expressive mediums of the performing arts, theater, dance, and music to reflect and document the experience of life in the Cayman Islands, to serve as a training ground for Cayman's aspiring performing artists, many of whom have continued to engage in the creative industries, at home and abroad, to inspire present and future generations with representations of the abundance of our indigenous talent, and to contribute to the economic well-being of the Cayman Islands. Mr. Speaker, the National Housing Development Trust plans to continue to tackle the liability faced with the old affordable housing located at the Bay Apple Blossom site, or the Apple Blossom site in Birch Tree Hill, West Bay, and assist with drafting the required plan that will address the existing tenants' housing needs. There remains 20 from the 70 West Bay houses that were previously built badly in 2004. The NHD will continue to access, coach, and direct new existing affordable housing tenants the path of home ownership by referring them to the banks to obtain mortgage financing. Between 2019 and 2021, between 2010 and 2019, the National Housing Development Trust constructed 116 houses, wherein a total of 81 families achieved the dream of home ownership by purchasing these houses outright. Continue to access and assist applicants under the Build on Your Own Property program. This program with the aim of constructing their house in collaboration. Continue to administer the existing clients under the Government Guarantee Home Assistance Mortgage Program. Assisted 325 from 2008 to 2012, and provide administration for the new applicants from the proposed new agreement that can assist approximately 120 families, as there's an ongoing and continued demand to have this program reinitiated. Continue to build on the construction of the affordable housing model of maintaining the cost for quality homes that are sold at an affordable cost to low-income Caymanian families. The National Housing Development Trust continues to concentrate its efforts building on the vacant land and affordable housing sites in East End and West Bay, but is also tasked to duplicate their efforts on the newly acquired property in North Side, 11 acres, in Georgetown, 25.5 acres. Continue to seek cost-saving measures and fine-tune the required process for efficiency in services. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, I would like to thank my colleagues in this honorable House for their support. I look forward to continue to work with them for the benefit of the Cayman Islands. I would also like to thank my hard-working agencies, department, and Ministry of Staff for their efforts and continued support in delivering the services and program of my ministry. I'd like to say a big thank you for the new Acting Chief Officer, Ms. Nellie Pucci, for all the work she has done and the support that she gives me. While I'm sure you will agree that much work has been done and many good things have been achieved, there is still much. So thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Bordentown people, and I hope to continue doing their work for this beautiful Cayman Islands.
Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? If not, I'll call on the Honorable the Premier to wind up.
Thank you, Mr.
The Honorable
Speaker.
the Premier. Honorable Premier, unless you're going to be a few minutes, can we take a break at this time?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was going to say that I wanted to thank all members who have spoken for their contributions, but to give proper justice to what they've said, I would want a few moments over the dinner period to reflect on them before I wind up the debate.
Honorable members, I think it's an appropriate time to take the evening break. We'll come back at 7 p.m.